everybody to the 2022 Annual Leaders Gathering. The Annual Leaders Gathering is a yes. Yeah, so the Annual Leaders Gathering is a meeting of a vast network of fellows, faculty members, facilitators, partners and friends of the Institute who meet every year to share insights, to inspire each other into positive action towards some of the most pressing things that we face as a society. The 2023 Annual Leaders Gathering is the third edition of this meeting, and really grateful to our partners who continue to support our work. So this is the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, mostly. So Nicholas, I see you online. Please pass on our best regards and gratitude to our partner CAS and to Stanbic Bank, which has also continued to provide us support and encouragement in the work that we do. The Sigo Family Foundation, which is our newest partner and which is providing us with fantastic support to make it possible for our operations to also proceed without hindrance. And of course, to SEED and UPMAC, SEED Concordia, which is another partner organization that we're doing fantastic work together, and UPMAC Associates, which provides us with our compliance and legal support. So having said that, let me also take an opportunity to welcome all our friends from other networks which also tuned in: the Africa Leadership Initiative, friends of the Leo Africa Institute, SEED, the Global Health Corps, SSF, and the others who were individually invited to attend this meeting. So for over the next 2 days, I think we're going to look through a really fantastic program which has been put together by the team at the Leo Africa Institute, and through this program it will provide us with insights, with knowledge and perspectives to critical thoughts to some of, like I mentioned earlier, some of the most pressing things that we need to either focus on our personal growth or the growth of our communities. And we shall also learn more from the growing needs of our community and what we need to do to support each other as fellows, as partners, but also listen to more on the story of the Leo Africa Institute at 10 and what that journey has been like. And I'll be sharing those insights later. Kwesi was meant to have hosted this meeting, so he sent in his regrets with the loss in the family, but he'll be joining us this afternoon. Also, I need to register our apologies for Carl Manlan, who is our chair of board of directors, who is currently in Doha, Qatar at the World Cup, representing his organization. And so things came in and was not able to join us. So for this morning, we're going to be started off by one of our most impressive member of our community, a Yale fellow from the inaugural class of 2017, Dr. Martin Balaba. Martin is a medical doctor and a health innovation enthusiast. He has a high record in leading substantial medical product and regulatory and stakeholder engagement of large-scale projects. Currently, he's working on projects to explore the opportunities of emerging technologies in bridging the gap in healthcare service delivery, strengthening systems, and realize a universal healthcare coverage. Martin is passionate about servant leadership and the critical role it plays in personal and community transformation. Martin is also a seasoned agro and health tech space. He's an entrepreneur in the agro and health tech space and a co-founder of the Rainforest Coffee Uganda. I've tasted the coffee, so it's fun. I don't even drink coffee, but I like your coffee, Martin.
Thank you.
So Martin, it's my pleasure to welcome you to deliver your keynote address this morning, which is going to start us off. Like I mentioned, we have amazing sessions. Everybody's gotten their program, and so you can find the details of all the speakers and all the insights that are going to be shared. But we also look forward to, for those who are joining us physically tomorrow, we look forward to welcoming you at the physical convening at PALD in Kololo, where we're able to not just share insights and perspectives, but also connect with each other. Having said that, let me now welcome Martin Balaba, who is going to give us his keynote address this morning, and then he can start us off for the morning session. So Martin, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Awel, and thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for everyone else who has made time to join in. I think this shows how important Leo Africa is, and it takes me back to the time I was just reading it online, and I did not know 6 years ago that would be here. So thank you so much for making time. I've seen the Institute grow, and I can attest to the fact that this is a very important milestone for the Institute. Distinguished guests, directors, and staff of Leo Africa Institute, faculty members, partners, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I should say that I'm immensely honored and humbled to present this keynote speech at the 2022 Annual Leaders Gathering, where Leo Africa is marking 10 years of building the Africa that we want. Leo Africa's 10-year milestone causes all of us to reflect on what has been the past 10 years of its work. The fellows who are now part of the Leo Africa Network, the members of faculty who have joined the Institute and hold an interest in working directly with young and emerging leaders to guide them into living impactful lives. It is important to realize the Leo Africa Institute is marking 10 years at the mark of the Agenda 2063, which shares a theme with the Institute, which is the Africa that we want. If you've read, you realize that Agenda 2063 is a shared framework for inclusive growth and sustainability in Africa, and importantly, the role the young people are supposed to be playing in the implementation of this agenda. So as we gathered here today, what is a shared sentiment is that the Institute has meant that these young people from different African countries are not alone in the leadership journey, but that the Institute has provided a platform where thought leaders can share, learn from each other, and pick up tools they need as leaders whose work ultimately fits into the aspirations of Agenda 2063. As the Institute and the conception of Agenda 2063 shares this 10-year mark, we acknowledge the importance of building this network of thought leaders that stretches over different African countries and the work of these champions in our own communities. After turning 10, one is forced to look in hindsight and reflect on the choices made, the goals strived for, and the goals that they might have failed at, or may have taken up their own lives outside of us. So I urge us as leaders to do some self-reflection of our own leadership journeys since we came to associate with the Institute and use these as the building bricks for how we can intend to grow Leo Africa in the next 10 years while sustaining what has been achieved by the Institute. Undoubtedly, Leo Africa's work over the past decade has been to build a network of leaders doing diverse work such as civil servants, entrepreneurs, professionals, academics, and champions in important spaces such as mental health, sexual and reproductive rights for young people, and climate change, which ultimately are looking towards achieving the aspirations of Agenda 2063. Leo Africa has done the significant work of creating a distinguished and much needed network for these leaders, and the annual leaders gathering today is a reflection of this noble work. And as leaders, we need self-reflection on whether our work, our choices, strategies, and even aspirations are looking towards building the Africa that we want, which in turn is a building block that Leo Africa has been working on for the last 10 years. And more importantly, how the achievements built over the past decade can be sustained as we grow as leaders and continue to do our respective important work while growing the Institute, because in the end, our work is reflective of the ideals shared by the Institute. The Leo Africa Institute has built strong networks through an in-depth understanding of the architecture of African societies, why they function in certain ways, and then guided young leaders on how to navigate our society as champions for the work that they do. Today, I reflect on my journey with the Institute as part of the inaugural Yale class of 2017. Never in my life had I met a group of young people with a strong, palpable, transformative works that they're doing, a desire to see a better Africa. And I should say I was really humbled when I met a diverse group of young people who strongly presented their ideas and beliefs and respected each other's opinions. And years later, these young leaders continue to hold on to their thread and stay in the arena. And just to say, some have even ushered in new management. This is something that Raymond Mejoni should be asked what it means. I urge us all to reflect on when you started out as a fellow, the leadership journey that you have embarked on, and you continue to journey through what you have learned from Leo Africa and the network that you have built that continues to share these ideals. This 10-year mark is momentous for us as part of Leo Africa Network. We should look back and then look forward to drawing the blueprint for the Institute's work for the next 10 years and how we can sustain what has been achieved in the past decade. And for us as leaders, the Institute has allowed us to share a space where we can be vulnerable and still be safe to share our leadership journeys. And I'll always remember all these sessions where every time a session is starting, Awel will always ask us, so how are you besides the things that you're doing? So it always made us feel so vulnerable, but safe. As many of us come to know by now, leadership can be lonely. And it is the members of the Institute and the network and your core fellows and this community that Leo has carefully and intentionally grown that will keep you grounded. It goes without saying that Leo has actually achieved what it set out to do. The next 10 years are going to be a reflection of the leaders that have been nurtured through this institute, such as ourselves here today. And this is very important. This is a journey of continuous learning and reflection as we continue to build character and legitimacy. Living out our purpose means grounding ourselves in the foundational values that we have individually come to adopt for ourselves and value-based leadership that we have learned a lot from Leo Africa. The next 10 years in the future of young leaders in Africa today is going to be influenced by the realities that we are facing now and those that we faced in the past decade. We have seen intentional activism in crucial spaces like African feminism, mental health, young people's reproductive rights, realization of neo-colonialism, and democracy in Africa. And this will be reflected in stronger societies and not just strong institutions in these spheres and the emergency of a breed of young Africans who easily recognize these societal problems and immediately align themselves with these fights. And for the leaders in this gathering today, and those that are part of the network, the reality of leadership in African communities is that it does not work in a vacuum. It is lived and applied daily in the spaces where we work and champion our ideals. Our communities will tell whether we have lived out the values and ideas shared and learned from Leo Africa. Interestingly, in the next decade, our leadership and the leadership styles and legacies will be influenced by the realities of the world and outside forces that have changed what we earlier thought to be the conventional leadership and the means of execution of work. The world is changing ever more rapidly than it was before, and this means adopting and adapting to change. This can be seen in the face of pandemics, geopolitics, contemporary neo-colonialism, evolving dictatorships that may not be readily recognized as such. And this brings us to the reality of how much work we have to do to meet the aspirations of the Africa that we want as shared by Leo Africa Institute. And so resilience in these changing times is what will allow us to retain the values we hold in our leadership journeys. And at the end of it all, it remains the simple things: listening, keeping a finger on society's pulse so that we recognize our place in society, and what we are called to do, and understanding how our leadership decisions constrain or release the next generation of Africans. The next 10 years may painstakingly hold the reality of reflecting society failures for the causes where we have not paid enough attention or that have suffered from the flaws in our own leadership. And this may be seen in struggles such as drug abuse that was previously associated with the high-end communities moving deeper into the rural communities, massive income inequalities, and cultural identity that have become a symptom of too little investment in the arts. Still, when these realities occur, as some may already have as leaders, the values we hold will be the cornerstones for addressing these problems and enabling us meet these fights. The realities of humanity and Africanness that are here and some yet to come will call for leaders who are grounded in the right ideals and remembering to sustain the accomplishments we have made so far, while allowing the values we hold to be the guide in the work that we do to face these challenges. However, there are also some massive opportunities amidst these challenges. Take an example of technology that has become a key tool in transforming our society. And indeed, technology will play a very critical role in the Institute's work as the network deepens and we navigate new leadership styles and ways of doing the necessary work that is building Africa and redefining what leadership means in our generation. For those that are very conversant with the music scene, taking lyrics from the song Bandana, a popular hit by Firewall GML, my legacy will not die. For 10 years, the Institute has written this history in the work it does and continues to do, and will live through the commendable and deserving leaders who have been nurtured. For the leaders that are here today in this gathering, please refuse to die an unlived life. Strive for the highest expression of the ideals that you have, and stand for that which you believe and be driven by your own will. As we read, please hold on to the thread and stay in the arena. A day such as this is a key milestone for us to reflect on the great work of Leo Africa and looking back on how far it has come in nurturing young leaders through its network of Yelp and Huduma Fellow. And because of this, the bar has really been set so high, and we have the task to live up to the ideals shared by the Institute and carve out the next 10 years. I doubt that in 2014, when Awel and his group were envisioning this, I don't think they really understood what they were going to face, because the last decade has seen so much change that has tested the very principles that they have set out to do. However, I am confident that the same principles and convictions we hold will keep us grounded as we navigate the realities of the next decade, while we sustain the growth and achievements that we have made in the past 10 years. I would like to end by congratulating the Institute for this 10-year milestone, and we're looking forward to working with you and the network to build the Africa that we want. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martin. I think we will all just clap for you. I'm sure the others are not on video, but I'm sure everybody's really happy with your keynote. And thanks so much for the insights on building resilient leadership, on keeping sight of the thread, being guided by values, and the need to build strong institutions and strong societies, and how we can do that. So we really appreciate your keynote, and I'll just maybe ask you a few questions for you to clarify on some of the points you've made. And then maybe we can, if any of you guys have any questions for Martin, you can put them on the chat, and then Martin would be able to address them for you. But Martin, you referred in your keynote speech part of the challenges of the last 10 years, and part of it has been COVID. You're a medical doctor, you live on 2 different continents. What do you see, what has changed? What has changed because of COVID? What should we be prepared for? And how do you see, you mentioned technology as an opportunity to navigate through some of the leadership challenges that maybe we're faced with. How do you, where are the challenges and where is the opportunity? How has the world changed? And for you at a personal level, How has it challenged you, and how do you think you've grown through the experiences you've had? Because me and you have had conversations when you are in Europe, and we had a long conversation about some of these issues. So I'd like to hear from you, since we talked, for example, and just for the gathering of these leaders, we are all faced with some, almost like the same type of challenges, or identity, income inequalities, opportunity. The world has changed. So what have you learned? And what do you see as things we should keep sight of?
Thank you so much, Awel. Going back to the first question regarding COVID, I think it is what should have been done, because besides the disease and the mortality that was associated with COVID, you will agree with me that the greatest challenge that COVID exposed or we faced was leadership. And you see, it was across the globe, where you thought that certain leadership issues are only familiar within what they have called the African societies. You realize that actually it's a narrative that is maybe stolen to us, but across the world, there were leadership gaps in how services should be delivered, in how systems should be arranged, in how systems should be, prioritized, where money should be going. And so healthcare is the heartbeat of society. And if the leadership is lacking in these critical sectors, once pandemics hit, you don't have solutions for plug and play, unfortunately, unless you are intentional on building, very concrete institutions and leaders who are purposed to look beyond today to ensure that systems are strengthened beyond just their term in office, is what COVID really expressed across the world. And you would have realized that there was a flood of the quest for leadership from the population, be it in Uganda, there were questions, be it in Great Britain, there were questions of leadership of Boris Johnson, and everywhere you realize that what we thought was working, even in the Western societies, actually was equally rotten. So for me, beyond COVID, the medical emergency, when you have strong institutions and leaders who, one, are knowledgeable, are willing to learn, are adaptive to change, and above all, with that desire to build to mentor young leaders, such that at the time of such crisis, you have a reinforced system. Take a case of Rwanda. I'm sorry to say, or to bring it up, there has been that intentional way of building systems, and you might criticize them or other governments that did well, but you realize everyone who had a very good response to COVID, it ultimately went down to leadership, ultimately, because at the time, the entire globe did not have, vaccines, and the like. And then also, when it comes to international leadership, we realize that there was, things like misappropriation of funds, vaccine racism, and then we had to be beggars for vaccines, and this is years in the making. And we knew at the time of such a pandemic, we don't have the institutions, we are not intentional of building capacities as Africans, or our governments are not in that foresight of building institutions like large-scale vaccine production, because we have the capacity. I have had the opportunity to sit in classes in Europe and other places that people might think are, very developed, but you just can't compare the capacity we have here on this continent with what we assume is better outside. So that has been something that I've also learned with the exposure I've had in the last couple of years. And that also ignited that self-reflection, like, what would I have done different if I was in their positions, or what should I do different to ensure that even in the work I do, I make sure that things have to continue with or without me. And having realized that early is how I have managed to work remotely, but I have managed to scale projects that are supporting HIV in the entire Uganda, because I have come to know how to build my team without needing me to be on ground. And because most of us in the pandemic were working remotely, but we didn't have to put down our tools. So my greatest lesson in the last 10 years, in the last 2 years of this pandemic and having to move with family back and forth between Uganda and Ireland has been the very uncomfortable adjustment. It's very, very uncomfortable because I'm working on different time zones. My team is down here. I have to rely on them. They have to rely on what I know. And that has been my greatest journey, that beyond the success of the programs, it is the people I have managed to grow. And that is because I was intentional on letting people take on the work to be exposed, in that right now they have gone to take on my position, and I'm really so happy for them. And it's just that satisfaction of seeing that the team that came as low cadres are now having meetings with, funders, and these are people who are way younger than me. So for me, I'm at a point where I am very satisfied of the last 2 years. It has been very uncomfortable, and thank you, Awel, for helping me through that time. In the middle of a pandemic, there's so many changes personally, as we shared, but you reminded me to take the simple things. I got that statement from you, the simple things: be grateful, look at what you have, and be sure that the next day is going to be better. Do not be desperate. So I remember that long conversation. Actually, I made it through those 10 years, at those 2 years, and it was so chaotic. You have work going on, you have family the other side. And if it wasn't the thing that you shared with me, I think I was going to lose my head, because it's just too much to keep. But again, thank you for keeping me grounded. And for me, it's been learning to be intentional on growing others. Ultimately, it's my greatest joy to see people grow. Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Martin. And you're one of the most impressive members of our network, and the work you do is really incredibly important. It would be nice for you to actually shed a bit of more light with especially members of our other network who may not necessarily be familiar with it. You can mention something about that. But you referring to our conversation and how important it was. And also you mentioning how you've built networks that have now, rather, leadership teams at your workspace, which have also made it possible to get your work to continue and even to grow. It also reminds me, one of the reflections from us going into celebrating 10 years next year is all of you guys have grown, and you're so impressive and you're so smart. And now in turn, we are the ones who are actually learning more from you. So now the student has become the teacher. So it's been such a great privilege for us to learn from you and to see you grow and the work you're doing. But as you come back to maybe share, to get to that, I would also like you to put in what you mentioned. You said leadership is a lonely journey. And I think for me, the reflection on us having this discussion, a decade of impact, and my conversation that we're going to have tomorrow is how lonely this journey can be, and how trying the last 10 years have been, being at the helm of leading the community that we've built and getting things done the way we have. So I would like to hear, and maybe for the rest of us who are on the call, when you say that leadership can be a lonely journey, what has been that experience for you? And maybe what have you learned from that? But it would be also good to hear for the rest of the leaders on the call to understand the bit of work you're doing, so that we're able to put into context some of the things you've shared as challenges and how you've dealt with them.
Thank you so much. So as a medical doctor, I started out I'm very passionate about clinical care. And when I started out at the Institute upon my graduation and internship, I always wanted to, because I come from a deprived society. I was born and raised in the slums of Kambodsha. So I have come face to face with what inequality is and how to rarely do people make it out. So because I witnessed quite a lot of, inequality when growing up, I always thought of what should I do different if I'm given the opportunity, And because I always have this image of seeing, of losing my uncle to HIV and a lot of family. So I was inspired to, I think, unknowingly pursue, infectious diseases. But when I got into the clinical practice, I really realized that it wasn't about the clinical practice. Like, what are the processes behind that make things work? And it always bothered me that certain things do not work. And this is because people ignore simple solutions or ideas that can maybe decongest the facility or make patient experiences better. And so because we were at the point where there was a shift in the paradigm of how healthcare was being delivered, that's where my friends and I came up with different concepts of setting up healthcare tech companies. We were so early for the market because we were very ambitious and we put concepts into work. We went out to get all the money and we got frustrated. And you could see in what I wrote, I successfully failed, you know. Successfully failed is because it was successful for me to take the step to learn. And I don't call, the reason I put it in quotes is because people assume that because something hasn't come to fruition, it's failure. But I really appreciate the processes that go into trying out something. I was never the same. I really had to learn the intricacies of healthcare, the complexities of what it means to innovate for healthcare systems, because it is beyond just healthcare and then the things that support it, policies, governance, you know, financing and things like that. And so I used that opportunity after those failures to understand healthcare. And I got the opportunity when a new department was opening up at IDI as an innovations academy to come and put my ideas into practice. And so my index project was creating a system that decongests health facilities, HIV facilities, in that patients can access their care at the most convenient pharmacies within their communities, private pharmacies. So you realize it's a complex because you're going to move goods from public places, public facilities into private facilities. How do you ensure that government drugs sitting in private pharmacies are not being sold? How do you know that patients are actually going to pick up their medicines? So the complexity of building that project was my first, and for 5 years, we worked on very many iterations, stakeholder meetings, and I can comfortably say that now it's in 63 health facilities with funding from CDC. It's a very complex but very simple system. All information, all commodities are monitored in real time. And I can say it's a baby I have seen come to life. And much as it's not owned by me, but to know that people are using the system to access HIV care, using this robust system that I know the background, and I'm not a tech person. So getting through that process of understanding what agile system development is, enforcing some of these things in a very unstructured environment, because I think Joanita's on the call, you know, they're the proper tech people, you know, they know what, you know, the Scrum Masters do, how you need to do all these things. I had to learn those things on the job. I had to take lessons to learn what does it take to build for large scale tech projects. And I'm coming from a medical field. I do not know technology. I do not code, but I can see concepts. I want to put them into place. So how do I make the team? How do I communicate together? How do I manage? It's been a very tiresome journey, but I am incredibly indebted to the people that gave me the opportunity. And along the way, I have also, you know, come up with different systems, support COVID. You know, we have an IVR system that we have adopted for all emergencies, and it's the system that actually behind the scenes that most people do not know supported a lot of COVID response in this country. The only functional system was done by me and the team at IDI. And right now we have adopted it for Ebola. And much as you're not hearing so much of Ebola is because that system is working behind the scenes to ensure that people who are in contact are followed up to the dot. They're given the best of care to make sure that we arrest the spread of Ebola. These are systems that don't come out in public, but that is the work that we're doing. So as a medical doctor, I'm at the intersection of healthcare and technology, both the simple tech and then the emerging technologies. And my first attempt at artificial intelligence was mentoring a young graduate who has developed a system to predict outcomes of certain undesirable side effects of HIV medication. It's a simple concept that I developed and he coded, and now it's being internationally presented for adoption by the WHO. So seeing, you know, working, I just enjoy working with people like young people who have energy, and when you see this and, you know, you take it to them and they work on it, you work together, you both grow, and, you know, that is for me remarkable. And like you said, what I've learned as a leader in the last, all that was really very lonely, because at times you don't have the right team. you don't have the right understanding of what you're doing. And every single day, I can assure you, I always thought it was going to fail. I knew I was going to be exposed. I had like imposter syndrome. Like I knew it was going to fail. Like usually they outsource from, big enterprises to come and build these systems. How do you entrust it with me? How do you think I'm going to come up with these ideas and tell, developers do this, tweak this, handle end users who are going to use the system to make it very simple, to make it very, engaging, very secure. I had to learn all these things, and I knew I was going to be exposed at any point. So most times I was so scared. I was like, what am I doing? And everyone was asking me, so what do you do? Because you say you're a doctor, and then you talk about technology, then you talk about coffee. So how do you, these things don't make sense. And I know they don't make sense, but I appreciated they're not making sense, that they are to me. And it's been, where not everyone is within that lane, and you're literally there alone, because the trajectory of medical doctors, you're done with school, so go into your masters and all these things. I really do want, and I wanted to, but there was something different I wanted for healthcare. And some of the things I've done in this time, I don't think I would have had the opportunity had I gone into, the super specialization immediately, learning the world and being part of Leo. All these different facets of life don't come really when you go to super specialization, which, is the normal trajectory for medical leaders, medical doctors. So it's been lonely because not many of my colleagues are in this field. And it is now that they're trying to realize the importance of why I took this kind of journey. But I will assure you that it's not been easy. You always fighting the thoughts of it's not going to work. But
yeah.
Step, you do this.
So you mentioned something very interesting. Like you, I struggled with this whole imposter syndrome. Who do you think you are to imagine that you can take on some of these things? And who do you think you are to imagine that you can? And sometimes it's also reflected upon you by other people, right? And I think this is probably one of the things that creates this tension and also leads a lot of people to just give up. So I would want you to speak a bit more about that. How have you experienced that? And also, how have you then overcome it? And because and you also talked about how you think you successfully failed. So how did you reconcile those? One is, how did you recognize, first of all, that in the midst of all that moment of imposter syndrome and feeling like maybe you're just not up to it or whatever, how did you recognize that? What was that thing that sort of spurred you into continuing to do the work?
One, I should say, importantly, I'm spiritual, and meaning that I trust that there's a power higher than me. That has kept me sane. Because often when I don't have answers to things, I am like, God, what am I doing, And it's in those lonely journeys, because you can't really go out to people within your circle. When you're in that position where you think you can go to someone, but it's only you who understand what you're going through. They can't, and they have good intention, but you just can't share because they don't understand. So yeah, being prayerful was really helpful. I didn't understand so many things. Importantly, the people you keep around. So for me and my friend, and I will tell you the name of this friend, he is, I think, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. He's a medical doctor. He's now the head of radiology at the Cancer Institute. He's a computer geek, and he takes some of the best photos in Uganda. You will have to read about Dr. William Ken Oluit. He has that tag, pictures taken by William Ken. He's a doctor. When you find him, you will not understand that he's even a doctor. Like when he's leisure day on the weekend, we started out together and we ground each other. You say, Martin, we can't do this because we are early in the market. Because some of the things that we're doing that are happening right now, like virtual reality and things, we had 10 years ago, and no one would understand what we had. And thank God it was at that point where I joined Global Shapers, Leo Africa, being in that room where everyone is vulnerable. And I have been very intentional in making, people that I can talk freely with, you know, when the outside world thinks that you're brilliant and for you like, I wish you knew, you know. And then, you know, I reach out to my friends, I reach out to you, I have, you know, informal conversations with Kwezi, Liz, you know, people on this group, you know. It's been very, very helpful when you meet them and like, okay, I'm not alone. This is the strategy they're doing. They're not giving you a blueprint. They're helping you contextualize things and appreciate what you're doing without feeling failure, but appreciate their process, their process, their process. You cannot cheat growth. Yeah. That's the thing I've learned. You cannot cheat growth. The process is very, very important. It is not magical. So you need to ground yourself. You need to have, I've been blessed to have good people around, you know, when I got married, and my wife has been very supportive, you know, she's deeply tech, and some of the things I was doing, I didn't even understand. And she, you know, teaches me stuff and things. So it's been grateful, but ultimately the people you keep around, the information that you read is what will actually make you appreciate yourself. Because unlike most leadership, what they call leadership institutions or youth groups, where when you enter them, you feel this spirit of competition or, you know, show off, you know, that kind of thing of, I am here and the rest of you are here. The reason I signed up to Leo, and I'm always grateful and I will always make time for Leo Africa, is because it was about you as a person. So tell us about, you know, those icebreakers. How are you as a person? Not how is work, how is what, how are you as a person? You know, it is not about who is doing what better, is how are you in your journey? So the community has really been very helpful in making sure that I don't feel like crap when I actually do feel like crap. When concurrently you're trying to establish a coffee value chain end to end, and in the medical field, and not very many people are going to understand, because when I speak coffee, people might think I'm a full-time, yes, I'm a full-time farmer, but it has also been a journey of learning what goes into the ground and finally what comes into the cup, from the farming practices to the post-harvest. How do you create now a customer-facing entity? We are still, I always say, Rainforest Coffee is a proof of concept, because we wanted to understand what goes back, you know, end to end. Not very many people were telling us about value chain. So we had to demystify what is adding value. How can I give our coffee from the ground, like without having to, you know, blend it? Like, can I will go to a tree and say, this is where my coffee came from, as other markets do to our products. And so, yes, right now you can go to Ireland in some cafes and you'll find Rainforest Coffee the same way you have it in your house. It's been a journey, and I'm grateful, even for Rainforest Coffee. Leo, it's been the community that has been very helpful, and for that, I'm grateful. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. And that's a good way to go into maybe the last segment of our conversation. And like I asked, if any of you guys have any question for Martin to expound on, please put it in the chat. We have another like 10 minutes to go. But Martin, like I said, you're one of my favorite people. And I always like that when we speak, we always speak honestly to each other. And as you said, I've also gone now to learn from you as much as you thought you're learning from me. But two things that I really want you to, which we've kind of like talked about, but also that continues, you know, sort of a follow through your conversations, is maybe touch on the issue of, you said that values we have to be guided by values in terms of how we direct our actions on some of the pressing issues in our society, you know. If it's leadership, I mean, I know we've talked about some of the leadership challenges, for example, you are facing during COVID, you know, but I also remember you in the corridors of Ministry of ICT, looking for all kinds of, and what is a doctor here, looking for funding from technology to, and then of course we know the challenges that we're coming through those processes, you know, the failures of leadership, sometimes the hope that would come from a positive engagement. So I would like to hear you emphasize the issue of values, and I think we refer to ourselves as a values-based leadership. So what does that really mean to you, and how has that been a practice? Like when you say values in leadership, what does that actually really mean in terms of how you interface? And the last question from me is, you say that we must adopt, and you said we must adopt, and
to the change, that you must adapt and adopt to the changing landscape.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, other people who are on the call who want to learn more from, you're a medical doctor, you're a tech enthusiast, you're a coffee farmer. How are you connecting all these dots? How all these dots connect? And you've also referred to your colleague,
William Penn.
William, yes, and all these passions that he's able to pursue at the same time focusing his attention on a very important career that he's pursuing. So those two things, how do you adapt and adapt and thrive? But also this question of values in leadership. I would like to hear a bit of more insight from your experiences after interfacing with the different systems and living on two different continents. How has that been? Oh, one last thing I also wanted to ask, and sorry, these are three things, just to allow other, I haven't seen any questions on the chat, so that's why I'm really utilizing the space. The future, 10 years later, the next 10 years, like I said, all the network is growing in significance. Many of you guys are really doing extraordinarily well, and now the needs are different. I'd like to hear, and you talked about support, that the supportive, how we ground each other as a network. I think that's what we're supposed to do. And also how your wife has been an important part of this growth journey in terms of someone who's able to ground you. I would like to know how your spouse, because this is an important thing for the growth of our network going forward. What does your wife think about the Institute? We have not interfaced with her. We'd like to do that at some point. I think the next convenings, we're probably going to be now inviting spouses and partners. So I would like to hear what her thoughts are from your conversations about Leo. The last time we talked, when you were in Ireland, I mean, you had the baby on one side and in the kitchen on another, you know, and she must have been thinking, what the hell are you doing? Get off the phone. And yeah, so I would like to hear more about how this support for your belonging of this community has been, and what we can do to enhance that.
Yeah, so interestingly, so my wife has been she's an open person, and she's supportive of things that I think, even when they don't make sense. Even when they don't make sense. So, but because she is equally a curious person, and she desires to see things changing within our own community, you know. Every time we're in Europe, she would say, I don't think there's anything magic about these places as we assume, because we have so much that we can do. But starting out with Africa, I think she always had, because I have opinions about how things need to be done, like I always want things to be better, and she sees the frustration in me, and she always thought that maybe I would be a politician. And that was really, you know, really scaring her if I go into, you know, politics and stuff, because I'm always open when things are not working out, be it at work or, you know, I always tell people, you know, how about we do things differently, respectfully. So when she realized that, you know, being in a space that helps me to be with people who think like me or can help me learn and unlearn, she was very, very supportive, because that has also been her own journey growing up. And so for me, the support I get from her and how she perceives the things that I want to do and the growth that she has seen me realize through the Institute is one of the things that, you know, even having arrived less than 48 hours into the country, and I had to make time for this, she said, you know what, you have to be there for Leo Africa. And at the time when she had just moved to Europe for work, and it was really hard on us, and especially, you know, for me. And when you made that attempt to reach out and have a meeting with me, she was surprised that I would be vulnerable to someone in the network, because there's that impression that always the men always find a way to deal with things without sharing. And it was impressive when I got off that call and she was like, you actually talked to Awel about the challenges you're facing with these whole shifts and uncertainties. So it was quite interesting, because she was like, this is really unexpected that, someone has reached out and you've made time to talk through the challenges of you being remote and making sure things continue to move and adapting to the change. So for me, that support that I've received from her and the rest of my family has been really grateful. They understand, they support, and when I'm wrong, I'm corrected. Regarding values, it has come at a cost trying to share my values, because the things I don't believe in, like, corruption and things like that. And you realize the kind of work I do, I interface with so many people who might have alternative approaches to where things should be done. And that has put me at a point of getting, uncomfortable tribal comments from certain people because I stand for the truth. It has put me at the point of risking my life, and I had to be pulled away from certain projects because of certain people who wanted me to do things otherwise, meaning they wanted maybe a kickback, and I wasn't willing to do that. And so it put my life at danger. But then it has also taught me to listen more and understand where people are coming from, so that I try to approach things better. So it's been unlearning that I don't have to be, always handed about, this is what I stand for, this is how it should be, but taking a step back to realize, to understand the complexities of character and values, such that I can work well with other people. And so that's been part of the growth. The thing that I don't compromise on, and the things I've had to, make time to learn better, especially dealing with a spectrum of, complex stakeholders and people. And it's been a very uncomfortable experience, but worth going through. How do I reconcile the different things? I think I kind of started out quite early with the rainforest coffee and other passions, but I think we have a wrong mentality of you can't do more than one thing well. I don't consider everything I do out of medical work as a side hustle. I find it disrespectful that the work that you do that is not corporate or is not within, your corporate work structures is considered as a work hustle. So I equally respect the things I do out of medical practice. And so if I'm going to be on the farm, I'm going to be there 100%. If I'm going to interface with the customer, if I'm going to learn and I'm having to drive through the country just to go to someone's farm, I'm going to do that. Like, it's the only thing I do. So it's the passion. It comes with, that passion to do it, but the willingness to learn. And it's a process to learn how to manage the different aspects of life, because it's been about 7 years into rainforest coffee and other intentions for other innovations and ideas. So for me, I don't believe that you can do only one thing, or you have to do one thing, and what lies out of your corporate structure is a side hustle. It is actually your time, it's your business, and you have to equally respect it. So there are no side hustles for me. It is my name on those things, it's my time on those things. So if they need me in the good and bad times, I have to be there. I have to make the time.
Fantastic. I think maybe just like 1 minute. So one of the participants has sent in a question, and so they wanted to know how you have shaped your personal vision. What's the personal vision for you for the next 10 years? How do you see your leadership journey growing, and how do you, I think the person wanted to get more insight on what tools have you put for yourself to make sure that you achieve the visions that you're setting for the next 10 years?
So in my keynote, I said the next 10 years are going to be reflective of the past 10 years. Like it is for the Institute. You realize that the next 10 years of Leo Africa are going to be dependent on what has been done in the last 10 years, because the fellows who have gone through the last 10 years with the network, by the natural order of things, are the next leaders, want it or not. By natural order, you'll be in those positions, and we shall be asking you, are you still standing for what you used to way back? So that is for Leo Africa. The next 10 years are not about the institute's leadership. It's about us, the fellows who have had the opportunity, because we are going to be in those positions, either at your workplace or in government, whatever field. So you believed in this when you were in those seminars, you know, and then you're in this position. It's a natural order of things. It's how Leo is going to be shaped in the next 10 years. As the fellows are the next 10 years of the institute. So personally,
Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead.
So personally, looking into, I have learned to go out and learn. I can read like 10 different things in a day amidst my work, because information is now democratized. People are willing to be there. There are too many resources to use. The greatest resource that I've ever found is people. And it's not money. You will not have everything because of money. Money is very important, but the things I have come to have because of people. And for me, I value those relationships. So my next 10 years are going to be very incredible. And because of the opportunities and the blessings I've had that God has given me to know people. And once you know one person, you know the next person that they know, that will improve your knowledge, that will, you know, your social network, your social, social capital is the greatest of all things that we can have, because you realize that now the world is borderless, you know, and how that is changing leadership. Those days when information was to the privileged people, people did not know what went into decision making. And now they are empowered. And now they can question leadership. And that is how technology is changing things, you know? And so, and you can't know it all except through the people that you know, and always being willing to learn. So the day I stop to learn is maybe the day I'm done. But for me, it is being willing to learn and also stepping out of my comfort zones, because I really get so bored easily. And yeah, it's really about being open
that
to
makes
learn.
the two. Yeah, it makes the two of us. Like you, I also get bored very quickly. So if something is not as impactful and as challenging and as dynamic, then yeah. So just a comment here from Wanjuhi, who is en route from Nairobi to Kampala for tomorrow's physical gathering. And she said, mine is not a question, but an appreciation to the Leo Africa Institute. It's a wonderful family that came through for me when I needed it most. I get very emotional whenever I think about it. Having experienced the cold and the rough world of politics has made me treasure this safe space. Thank you for creating it, and thank you all to the fellows who have become family. So that's a good way to end this conversation, Martin. I think Wanjuhi echoes your own thoughts. And just to thank you so much. I know you're still jet lagged from your travel, but you put together time to put together these keynotes and to prepare for it, and we're very grateful. So as I ask the team to maybe make sure all our panelists are ready, Akbar, please guide, how do we take a picture?
Well, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was speaking to myself. Yeah. Did you hear about the reading Wanjuhi's note? Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, fantastic. No, I was just asking Amri or Akbar if there's a way we can take a picture with you, but I think they may have already done that. I know the Amri, any? Okay, so thank you so much, Martin. I think we're going into the next segment, which is a conversation with some of the partners we have, which are also represented and led by very dynamic emerging leaders who we are also very privileged to be connected with. Thank you so much for making the opening for the annual leaders gathering very insightful and a great learning experience. I think from this conversation, those who are joining us as friends of the Institute have learned a lot more about the Institute than they knew before. I think the partners are reinforced about the need to continue supporting the work because of the growth that you referred to and Wanjui has talked about. But more importantly, I think for like the faculty members, I've seen Hashim on the call and I think William. So for those who sacrifice their time and their effort to do these trainings, which would be costing thousands of dollars, but we can't afford that. But however, they just give their time. Now they realize that it was worth the investment was worth it. So thank you so much, and I guess you're joining us tomorrow, but also for the rest of the day, you'll be tuned in. So we'll continue engaging with you. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you.
Back to you, the team controlling the background, so we can get to the next panel. Give me a signal when you need us to continue. Okay, so Amri or Akbar, please give me a signal. We are short of time. We need to make sure we keep in time for the opening.
Yes, I think we're good to go. All the panelists are on.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks again for everybody who is joining us for it's Friday morning. It's a working day, and you're making time to join this very important conversation. We really greatly appreciate. Maybe I'll talk about again why we're here. The annual leaders gathering is an annual meeting for the Leo Africa Institute network, which includes fellows, partners, faculty members, board members, and all the different friends of the Institute who support our mission. We set out to start the annual leaders gathering a couple of years ago, and with the main intention of setting up one of the three key objectives of the Institute, which is establishing an authentic African convening platform. We were commonly seeing a lot of meetings, the World Economic Forum being one of them, and many others which I personally would attend. And then all our leaders would also be attending, but there were fewer of such meetings happening here on Africa, especially in regards to informing the thought process about who we are as Africans, what our issues are, and agreeing on the key actions that we need to take in addressing some of the challenges that our society faces. You would commonly see some of these discussions being discussed in foreign capitals with agendas and programs designed by non-Africans. So for us as an institute, we saw that as a big challenge of something we should do something about, and decided that we are going to just set up a forum, a meeting that will bring us together, that will continue to grow. We could be 5 people or 10 people, but we envision with it, and which is how all these other meetings have started anyway. But we envision that in the next 5 to 10 years, we should be able to see a vibrant, strong, and influential platform with people like you've just heard from Martin and the people you're going to speak with. So for us, the annual leaders gathering is an extremely important meeting that brings us all together annually, and we welcome you, and we hope you will continue to, to join our sessions.